Hello, and welcome to another live session with Capsule, where you get to learn and connect with some of the most accomplished, interesting in-house creative and marketing leaders today. I'm Natalie Taylor. I lead marketing at Capsule. Please drop in the chat your name, where you work, and what you do there, and maybe your LinkedIn profile too, if you feel up for it. If you've never been to one of our live sessions, you might be wondering why we host these. Why does Capsule, a video software for enterprise brands who are trying to go all in on video, host events for this creative and marketing community? There's two main reasons for that. One, as the demand for video continues to increase and the usage of AI continues to increase, we believe that you all as creative and marketing leaders will be the most important group of people for telling meaningful stories. And at Capsule, we're very interested in figuring out how we can use AI to make video more human, not less. And the second reason is I believe very strongly that connection is more important than ever. We've been hosting in-person events for this community for over 2 years, and now we're starting to host more of these virtual sessions. And the theme that I hear over and over, and that I experience myself, is that learning from my peers, feeling validated by my peers, is one of the most valuable things that we can get as working professionals during this time of a lot of change and uncertainty. And I know that's something that today's guest is eager to chat about too. One last thing before I pass it off to our two speakers today is if you have any questions for Ryan at any point, please drop them in the Engage tab, and we'll get to those questions near the end of the session. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Champ Bennett and Ryan Hammill.
All right. What's up, everybody? I am really excited to hang out with you guys again today for, I think, what is our 5th or 6th live session. We have spoken to some really incredible people in the creative industry that are really thinking about AI and how to use it to do their jobs better. And today I'm delighted to speak with Ryan, who is the principal creative director at ServiceNow, and he currently leads global brand campaigns there. But previously was also creative director at AWS. He led creative and cross-sports partnerships with the NFL, the NHL, PGA, F1. And through that work, reached over 8 billion people globally, which is like basically the whole world. That's incredible. And so Ryan and I originally connected through his work at ServiceNow, but what really has stood out to me in my conversations with Ryan is that he doesn't just think about technology and AI through the lens of like tools and workflows, but thinks really deeply about human behavior, how we all think, how we tick. He thinks about taste. He thinks about storytelling in ways that I found very interesting. And then I think the other thing that's really impressed me about Ryan is that he is not only a creative, but he's also a great operator. He really thinks about how do you do great creative work in what is often a very difficult creative environment, the workplace. And I've been really impressed with his ability to kind of think through both the creative challenges that we all face in business, but also how to like actually navigate organizations to do great work. So Ryan, super pumped to have you here today. And like I said, you're a great, creative person, but also have a lot of operating experience, which leads me to believe that you have a super interesting background. So I'm hoping that you could just kind of talk us through a little bit of your background and give people a sense for where you came.
Well, I really appreciate that, Champ. And first thing I'd want to say is thank you, and thanks to everybody at Capsule for having me. I'm very excited to be here. Obviously, like the conversations that we've been able to have at the live events that Natalie was talking about earlier have been like spectacular. So I'm glad to be able to share some of that energy that we had. And that is a super flattering introduction for me. I'm happy to walk through some of my story, which is, a lot of people in advertising and the creative community have come here by various means. Like, not everybody seeks and looks to become an advertiser, but like winds up here through kind of a a twisting road, and mine was much that way. So I actually started my career at in the newspaper business. Like way back in the day, I was a sports and crime reporter for the Orange County Register, which is in my native Southern California. It was our daily newspaper. And there's where I learned how to tell stories, pitch stories. I was writing on a deadline all the time. Whether it was trying to get something out on the web in 5 minutes or, making a press run at 11 o'clock at night. That was kind of my introduction to the working world, which was really great because nothing teaches you quite like having a gun trained on you. you've got to deliver in the next 5 minutes or else. But I could see the writing on the wall for newspapers like almost immediately that I needed to make a change. And I had a great friend that worked at Ogilvy Mather, and he put me on to a training program that led to me creating my own advertising portfolio. And then I got a job at Daly and Associates up in LA, my first agency job. I worked in the same building that they shot Westworld, which at the time we're like, man, this place is trippy. And then, cut to a few years later and you're watching robots like walking around in the same office space that you were in was great. And that's where I learned everything from the craft of advertising, kind of lived in the house of no for a while, like had creative directors that were like hard but fair on me, and learned a lot about what it means to not just tell a story over the course of a newspaper article, but how to do that in 30 seconds, how to do that in a 6-second ad. And like, we even started with how do you do this in a billboard or a banner ad. So that was really instructive. And then, life progressed. I had my daughter was born, and we wanted to make a change. So I wound up heading to Seattle and working in the tech community there. And I worked at Amazon for 7 years. I started in the advertising business there, which is a lot like an agency. It was the like Procter and Gamble's of the world, or Sony or Progressive Insurance would come in and say, hey, like we want to advertise on Amazon Media. And I was the guy that they would go to, and we would shape campaigns to make them fit inside of Amazon. But then, one of the things that you were talking about as being an operator, I earned what I called my Amazon MBA, which was figuring out that the way in which you're going to be successful in these businesses is not to be facing a client or a customer often, but it's like, how do I get closer and closer to a product that gets in the hands of a real customer, a final customer of Amazon? And I made the move to Amazon Music. I'm a huge music head. You probably can't see it. Just off camera here is 1,200 vinyl records. So I'm a fan of DJing and all of that. Worked there for a few years and then made the move to AWS and ran all that. I came full circle. My sports reporting background came all the way around, and I worked on F1, NFL, brand campaigns until I finally made it to ServiceNow and did customer storytelling and F1, like for Aston Martin. I've worked on that campaign as well as the NHL. So that sports partnership, customer facing technology platform story is something that I have still been telling, and will continue to tell, because that intersection of technology, something complex, and culture, and making it count in a human story, that's kind of where my career has led me.
That's amazing. What a dynamic and a diverse set of experiences to kind of bring to the new world of AI. I mean, I think what everybody's here to learn from you is, from someone who's been through that background and seen kind of many different technology shifts over time. How are you thinking about AI in particular as it relates to this, seems like never-ending conversation about kind of like taste and quality and, craft versus high scale, high volume personalization? There seem to be kind of two different conversations that are happening today. And just curious how you're thinking about those.
I mean, it's an excellent question. What's interesting, and like, I learned a lot from working at Amazon. Jeff Bezos said a lot of different interesting things. I don't agree with all of them, but there's one that like really stood out to me as like being the most important lesson that Jeff Bezos taught, which was don't think about what's coming next. Think about what will never change. Like how, and in his point of view, what will never change, like for a customer, particularly somebody online, is people will always want lower prices. They will always want more selection. They will always want more convenience. So if you're able to do those simple but hard things, you're always going to succeed. And so I like tried to think about with AI that saying it's going to be impossible for me to look around the corner and see what creative trend is going to come or try to, fast follow on to anything. But if you're to concentrate on that which never changes, I think that you're going to be much more successful in this AI moment. So I did think about it like when we were talking and I came up with much like price selection and convenience is something that Jeff Bezos and Amazon lean into. There's a couple nevers that I think work for the creative community. And it's like, the first thing is you should never be boring. Like rule number one, like if you're showing up, even in the business to business world, and you're saying something that has been said before, it's redundant, it's not novel or new, doesn't capture people's attention, like you've already lost. The second thing is that you can't be irrelevant. Like you could say something that gets attention, but if it's a non sequitur or it doesn't mean something like in the marketplace, doesn't have some sort of utility to it or news value, then you're also like kind of going to be hurting there. And then finally, and this is the one that I think people struggle with the most is you should never be insincere. And if you're able to remain authentic, human, approachable, ServiceNow has done a great job of this. I think we're the only B2B company that might have dropped an F-bomb in an ad. So that it was bleeped out, but for great comic effect. And I feel like that's a very sincere version of us showing up at work it's not like the word solution or impactful learnings or any of this other like BS jargon that you hear or see. Like if you drive between SFO and into downtown San Francisco, it's like nothing but this like wall of jargon, AI jargon. And we're trying to stay away from that by living that third tenet.
How did you get that? How'd you get that done, by the way? The F bomb. How many people were part of that conversation?
I think, well, first off, like that was a number of different people that were involved in it. That was written by a guy, Ian Forsyth, who's like one of our chief writers. And now he just was promoted to creative director. Fantastic writer. And I think that it really speaks to the attitude of our CMO, Colin Fleming, and our CEO, Bill McDermott. Like ServiceNow, like a lot of tech companies are turning a corner, and the corner that we're trying to turn into is something that is more human and approachable. And that includes occasionally swearing, like in the right context. So I don't think you're going to see that actually on a billboard, but it did like get a little bit of attention, like at the time that it happened. It was a little over a year ago that went down. But I think really what I'm trying to say here is that if you put those three things together, it's that the thing that will never change is the humanity of storytelling, regardless of the channel or the tool that you're using to do it. And humans are interested in other human beings. And in that way, like using AI as a tool to amplify sincerity, to amplify, interest or engagement, rather than just crank out the same thing over and it's not about making faster widgets. It's about making more powerful stories, in my opinion.
So, tell me a little bit about how you have been able to accomplish that, at ServiceNow, and like, how would you sort of explain to someone who's constantly pushing for more premium or more elevated content?
Yeah, I have a couple more slides here, and I can I think even answer that question. Like I'll go a little deeper into it because I think that it's super interesting the way that you think about approaching what that means. So being human means being a little imperfect. And the way that you think of, like, people look at AI as this tool to perfectly reproduce like pixel perfect images. I think that as that, pardon me, slides went dead there for just a second here. Let me share. Hold, please. All right, we're back. Um, Yeah. So people aren't looking for pixel perfect perfection anymore because that's now been commoditized, right? If
Yeah.
you think about it, um, as much anybody can go into Whisperflow and ask like for an AI video that's like damn near pixel perfect. Like Kalshi did an ad that ran in the NBA last year. I think they spent like $5,000 on it, and it was that wild like crocodile wrestling one. It got a lot of attention, but at the same time, it like really what people were gravitating towards was that it was like extremely strange. And it almost like, how did Disney let this go and air? But I think that that idea of like sweatiness or imperfection, it's almost something that you're going to have to program into how you approach AI, because the sheen that you put on everything, the kind of like stamped artificiality of it, is going to be something that you see, it's going to become commodified.
I feel like
So
I'm already seeing that. Like, I mean, just kind of scrolling through things, social media or whatever, like you can, even though it seems to be getting more real, there's still some kind of like I think sheen is a good word. There's a treatment to it that like our brains are already seeming to like adapt to like understanding. And so it does sort of push on this idea. Like I've seen salespeople who are like purposely writing emails that have like mistakes in them, so that they kind of feel more authentic. And it's sort of, you're kind of talking about kind of the creative version of that, which is how do you push on aspects of the content that almost feel like there's no way that they could be AI, because if you were using AI, you wouldn't have done that sort of thing.
that's right. Yeah, like AI would be trained to fix everything and for it to be perfect in every way. Obviously there's going to be an arms race. Like you can extrapolate out in the future. They're like, oh, make this just human enough.
Right.
Like that's going to wind up happening for sure.
Uh-huh.
And I think that
Feeling that
it's,
already.
yeah, 100%. But like, I don't know if you guys listen to the Acquired podcast, but going into my operator mode, they just had done an episode about Ferrari and like what
Mhm.
makes Ferrari valuable as a brand. And one of the things is like they cap production, right?
Right.
And the idea of like creating scarcity is interesting in that there's scarce amounts or finite amount of like human craft and time that can be put into a thing. And as the perfection of media becomes commodified, that which is like provably human. Let me give you an example. Like I flew back from Amsterdam last year, and there was a safety video on KLM Airlines that my family and I were running on, and they used what looked to be like a frame animation on Delft, like that blue and white ceramic, you know, um, art that is like, either tiles or teapots and things like that you would see in Holland. Um, and it looked like it was an animation playing out on the ceramic. And I'm like, oh, that's like really awesome AI that they put to it. But then at the very end, the camera pulls out and you see thousands of individual tiles that they had made. And they
Mm.
proved that it was handmade, like at the end of the video,
It's
that
like that's
each
becoming
frame.
part of the content now, right? It's like, I don't know if
Yeah.
you saw the Apple, the new Apple intro,
Yes.
Apple TV intro where they like shot it. I don't know exactly what it was, but some sort of like prism type thing, and they shot it on film, I believe it was, if I'm not mistaken, or at least on digital, um, rather than doing it, with, they probably could have just prompted that into existence today, but they kind of went back to this craft and then they made that part of the story.
I think that's going to become more and more uh, uh, a value add. Like the idea that a human and human craft and time and care and attention, in the same way, I feel like everything is going to become either a Waymo or a Ferrari. Like you're going to be going more and more like one direction or the other. That
It's funny.
I know.
I drive a Tesla and a 1990 BMW. And depending on my wife has the Tesla and I have the old BMW, which breaks down all the time. But it sort of like fits into that way of seeing the world. You have your convenience and then you have this sort of connection to the raw and the authentic, right?
Yeah. And so the way that it's funny that we're talking about cars and that you bring up Tesla, like in the same way that an electric motor can give you efficiency, like on one side, like essentially like unlimited mileage or damn near it, or it can, like a Tesla Model 3 has great range, or you can be a Lucid, Sapphire, like, and
Right.
have 1,000 horsepower car that like literally the tires can't even stay on the street. So that's power on one side. You can think of that as AI in service of craft. I've had the good fortune, particularly with the work that we've done for the NFL and Formula One, of working with some production companies that use bespoke AI that's like lot different than a VO or anything like that. The one that I would point to is Rascal Post, which they have an AI that exists inside of a server that they run for Flame that can do things like replace lips and teeth like perfectly, like 4K perfection. And now you can get your actor speaking in a number of different languages, and then the mouth like matches up. It's seamless, right? That's like 100% power. But
How does
then,
that make you feel? Oh,
go ahead.
good.
No,
Well,
no, you go.
I was going to say on that point, like, how does that make you feel about the argument that AI is going to kind of like replace creatives?
I think that there were more creative people working on that in post than were on a set. Like what has saved us was having to knock out sets in every different location. Like we shot on a soundstage in Prague and lit like all of the pre-production with like the plates were done in advance. And then we matched on the soundstage to the light for each of those and then masked out the mouth over and over
Right.
again. Right.
Which is something that like an off the shelf model could not do. And so what you're seeing actually is creatives who are using this technology in creative ways to do things that have never been done before, which seems to be kind of this, universal truth that like, whenever something becomes table stakes, creatives end up finding a way to push it into new territory. And that becomes kind of the new standard, as opposed to, well, we're just all going to do this with like, we're all just going to prompt it into Chat GPT and be done with it.
Yeah, I think that that's exactly right. Like as we head towards parity, right? That everybody has the same tools. Eventually what's going to wind up happening is that efficiency will no longer be a differentiator. Like you're no longer going to get the same amount of squeeze out of creative that because everybody's going to be doing the same thing. And then it's going to go back to what idea do you have? How is this engaging? And then not only that, there's now an avalanche of slop and BS and, people without taste. And I would even go like a step further than that. It's like not even taste, it's humanity, right? Like, cause I think the taste in some ways is exclusionary. Like I hear that word over and over again. It's like, oh, AI is going to be is going to favor people who have taste. Almost like what that says to me is like CMOs and creative people who are at the pinnacle or the tippy top of it are trying to create a gap for themselves where only they can, be the ones that are the determiners of that. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be the case. I think that if I take a look at even like kids like my daughter's 13, her and her friends will do things that are like willfully bad, like in the form of like selfies. They don't use filters anymore. They'll like do those big head, like wide angle photos of themselves, like on their foreheads and send in, or like take a picture of their foot, like weird, like these weird, like non sequitur things that just like show that they're human. It's almost like that same level of craft that we're talking about where we're going to prove that a human did this, they're going to do it the other direction by like being willfully bad. And I think that you're going to see a lot more of that is like, show me that you're not a robot, like prove that you're not a robot, you know?
100% agree with that. Yeah. I think we're seeing that already. Well, I know you have some incredible work. And I think people are very curious to see kind of how that your philosophy and way of thinking about the world translates into the creative work that you're doing. So, where should we start with looking at some of this awesome work that you've done?
Yeah, let's take a look at the F1 work. So let me back up here. This is the work that I did with Rascal. You'll see one of the spots that we did in 2024 that was for AWS's partnership with Formula One. Formula One actually gave us the CAD drawings for the car. When you take a look at this, I will spoil it just a little bit that the only footage that is real is at the first couple shots, like in the introduction to the commercial, and then at the end. And everything in the middle that looks as though it's happening in real life, up to and including the people that are in it, were all animated and AI generated. So we only used real before and after, and the concept of the spot is us passing through a lens so that we can see how data affects Formula One. So that's the setup to this.
200 miles per hour, 300 sensors, 1.1 million data points a second, sent instantly to the AWS cloud, so AI can generate insights for F1 in real time, to keep millions of fans on the edge of their seats. Generative AI on AWS, a new era of racing, a new era of business.
Amazing. How do you think about, like, if you were to do the same spot again, but pre-AI, like, I guess where I'm trying to get to is, like, how much does AI sort of influence the creative process for you today versus, no, we know a vision that we want to achieve, and AI is just sort of like how we're going to get there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely. So here's what AI like that was obviously prior to what we have available to us right now.
Mm-hmm.
Things like we were stuck in that aspect ratio the entire time. Like it would have cost us too much time and effort in the render to try to push it into different aspect ratios. We did it after the fact, but it didn't look great, right? Like if I had to do that now, I'm like, oh, let's do this again, but let's get a different camera angle, like for it coming into 9:16 so that we could shoot vertical, right? Like what's the vertical cut look like? And then rather than us like being, in horizontal treatment, like we'll move the camera over here and do head on or 1-point perspective shots, or we'll have the camera move into it. That would become available to us. Like, and then I don't have to sacrifice like with a scan and pan that doesn't look very good and obviously doesn't perform very well on, vertical format. So that would become available to us. We had several concepts that we liked. We could only afford to put one of them out there. I'm imagining that like for the same amount of money that we spent on this, we could have had a full campaign in 3 different video formats. Like, and we were running this in 12 countries. The reason why we don't have anybody talking in it, I don't know if you noticed that. The voice that you heard there, by the way, is Mark Strong. Like he's an English actor that was in Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. He is incredible. Like look that up. But if we wanted the equivalent of that in Brazil, like we ran this like for the Brazilian Grand Prix, everything had to be just replacement VO in a world in which like, Rascal is now replacing mouths. We could actually have somebody talking in it and just replace it and then get the transliteration that way. That wasn't available to me then. So the reason why we shot this the way that we did and edited it the way that we did was so that it could run in all these different locales. I feel like there's a lot more flexibility that's available to us now that we could, if I needed to make this in 6 different languages, I could and have somebody talking to camera. So that would, to me, be a lot more engaging. And that's like what's exciting to me about AI at the high level, right? And then at the low level, it's how do we get this in the hands of more people? Like if we wanted to say knock out a plate of the F1 car running, and rather than having those stat graphics that we had, have a marketer like lay down a headline that's in it so that we could scale the different B-roll. That wasn't available to us either, and now it is, you know?
Right. So this idea of kind of using AI to personalize and scale is something that you're thinking about.
Yeah, 100%. Like without us having to, it was just, we didn't have the time and energy and funding to do it. It took every penny, we rang out every penny that we could to put it in the craft of the spot. I think that if we had what we had now, then it's like how many different pieces could fall out of it automatically. We're already starting to see that from our partners. Like I know that Rascal has gone on to a relationship with XCM, the cross-channel marketing team at Amazon. And they're now doing things where they're taking like a 2D image inside of a product detail page. Like a product detail page is like, let's say you go to buy water filters at Amazon or something like that. It's the little tiny photo in the corner. They can just suck that photo out, turn it into a 3D model, and then place it inside a shot. And so like doing that, now all of a sudden, like a shopping cart that you have in Germany can be different than the one that you have in Japan. That's different than the one that you have in Australia. And they can use like actual product detail pages to make that happen in like less than a week. And that used to take like 6 weeks, you know?
Wow. Amazing. What else you got? I know you got some great examples.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and take a look at the NFL work. And again, this is like same kind of like high res, high touch stuff that we had. The concept in this has happened after F1. This is how NFL's next gen stats are connected through AWS.
AWS is helping the NFL to predict and prevent injuries with AI. By analyzing millions of data points from every game, they power simulations of any play, in any condition, with any player. And by capturing every move to reduce injury risks and improve equipment, it helps keep players on the field and at the top of their game.
So was all of that live action then run through AI similarly to the yeah.
Yeah. So that was wild. That the way that we shot that was we took over the practice facility at the University of Florida. They have an indoor football facility that's air conditioned, if you can believe it. It's wild. And we took it over for a week in the summertime when they were in their off season, and blocked everything out and had a techno crane that we were filming from above, and like had cranes running. That like one shot where the guy's running through and then the snow is hitting him, we actually ran like a 360 crane shot around him and ran snow on top of him, comped that out, and then laid the data down on top of him.
Wow.
So
what was the AI like? What aspects of that were actually run through? Like, were they run through like actual video models, or yeah?
Yeah, it was. So in Flame, it was the physics of that data like falling through the shot, and we actually had to render that like. And this is prior. Remember, this was like not prompting. This is almost like hand coding things because this was 2 years ago, and we we had to run that model like 17 times because like the flakes of the data would look too big or the glow would be too much. And then you have to re-render and like comp it again. And the way that we did it was like way more craft filled. I think that you could probably make something that looks like that in a week, like versus what it took us again, like, 4 to 5 weeks to do something like that.
Super cool.
Yeah. So that was the NFL stuff. I think that probably like another good one to show you real quickly would be some of like something that didn't take AI but was work that we did for a brand. It's we were always shooting our brand spots, which were called Curiosity Kid, for the US. But then as AWS marketing scaled and we were trying to grow in different countries, in fact, like our fastest growing locales were either in Europe or in Oceania, like in Australia. We couldn't necessarily run to and film in all of those locations, even though that's what those teams wanted us to do. So we came up with this idea for Curiosity Kid, which, by the way, let me explain the concept to you and to the audience here. Curiosity Kid is, people would always ask, what does AWS do? Or what is AWS actually about? Or what is cloud computing? And we thought, oh, we should answer that like you would answer for a child. Make it something that's like really simple. And it would be, AWS is how Taco Bell makes ordering predictive. It's how Formula One gets stats to fans. It's how Netflix streams video. And the final frame always was, AWS is how each of these companies innovate or power themselves. And then we even took it a step further, is that AWS is how, or the Curiosity Kid campaign had ran for quite a while in the United States. So as that campaign matured, so did the kids, right? The questions that they were asking became more involved. And then until finally in this spot that you're about to see, it was a young girl who's, probably in high school. And now she's using AWS herself, and she represents the next generation of innovators that are going to be coming, because AWS is how her generation is going to innovate the next great application or piece of AI. And then in other less mature audiences, like we would run younger kids and make it almost like it's as though the campaign grows up with the market, is the way that we were thinking about it. Yeah. So I'll go ahead and you can take a look at the US based work first, and then we can talk about probably the Australia one or the Canadian one next.
Sorry, Mom. It's amazing what you can build on AWS. Imagine creating cool stuff that can make ordering tacos a breeze and let you watch every shot from every player anywhere you want. Learn about investing in the coolest companies and watch your favorite team from the other side of the world. Just imagine what they can do when I'm in charge.
Whoa.
All right. So that's the US based spot. If we have it to show, like, we should probably also show the French Canadian spot. And obviously Quebec and Canada is like a big market for us, but it's less mature than the United States in terms of adoption. So you can see the difference in the casting here.
Mon moment préféré, c'est quand j'ai aidé papa à trouver un lit dans le ciel.
Surclassement.
Et on a même essayé plein de nouvelles lunettes. Je les aime, celles-là. J'ai appris à dire je vengo hambre en espagnol. Et on a deviné qui allait gagner la mise en jeu.
Madame, je peux dire mes 4 moments préférés moi aussi?
Yeah, no, it's such a great example of like how do you take one kind of base piece of creative and then figure out ways to connect with other audiences. And we have a lot of customers at Capsule who are really interested in like, how do you actually do that? Especially at, maybe not sort of a Super Bowl quality scale like you're doing here, but even at a smaller scale, this concept of kind of like personalized messages to the right audience at the right time with the right context. How do you think about that? And like, maybe you could explain how you guys did it for this, which is like this, very bespoke thing. And then how do you also think about it when you're trying to do that to like 1,000 different audiences, if that's even, something you're thinking about?
It is something we're thinking. Obviously, it's something we're thinking about. And I, again, I was very privileged to be able to do this. Those two spots, by the way, were shot in the same place. Like we flew halfway around the world to find economy of scale. And we did a super shoot that lasted for 10 days in Cape Town, South Africa. And we had a really great crew and 2 cameras running the entire time. We would cover an entire spot and everything that you see there, get it in the can in 5 hours, and then move locations and do a second. So we were doing 12-hour days, 2 locations, covering, 6 different shots each. And that's how we knocked out 2 spots each for 5 different locales. Which is a lot of, a lot of video was shot in a very short amount of time. And then we had to think about like, what was the post pipeline for that? We were taking a look at rushes that were already being cut like in the boards, like the next day. If we had to pick up shots, we could do that. We wound up saving over $1.5 million, like shooting. And that's with like taking everybody into Cape Town and putting them up for that time. We had a Panavision truck. It was wild. But that's like at the very high end, like how do you find efficiency and scale that way? But if you're looking for efficiency kind of in the mid market, like that's what really everybody wants. How do you bridge what you see there and like take it down into something that scales over and over again?
Yeah.
I think that the considered use, particularly in like paid social media, if I had to do it over right now, I would have ran a 3rd camera and it would have been vertical the entire time. Like it would have been kind of like a lower res Sony camera that we were running vertical. And I would have probably comped in like Greek or something like that. And like, how do we frame up supers that are going to sit on that? Or at least like, how are we going to think about B-roll to lay down supers on top of it and capture people's faces in order to get as much of that human element as possible in human storytelling? We would probably shoot it handheld. So it has that little bit of like shake to it, that people love and feels very like I'm talking about sincerity. How can we make that 3rd camera or that lower level feel sincere? And then how many different ways can we run that in different locales? If we have something that works in Germany for casting, can that work in all of EMEA? Can we put more languages on it? Maybe we don't have a media buy in Spain, but do we have a paid social, that we can run there? And does it work that way? So in my head as an operator, I'm like, how can we squeeze more out of this and then like make it something that we're capturing the ingredients to content as much as we are like looking to make something specific, like one specific dish. I love the restaurant analogy. It's like, how can we not just have a roast here? Like, how can we also have sandwiches and make soup out of it? Something,
That's a really good way of putting it. This concept of like ingredients is a really interesting one because it kind of makes me think about something we talk about a lot on this program, which is context, creative context. Like, how do you provide your organization with the tools to take these really, premium assets, but then find ways to recontextualize them, repurpose them using AI or whatever. And I'm just curious how you think about enabling ServiceNow, which is what, a 30,000 person company-ish in that neighborhood?
On its way to that, yeah.
Yeah. So like, that's a lot of people that all have kind of different messages and stories that they want to tell. And in part, they want to be able to do that with, the context that you as the creative team are producing. So curious how you're thinking about the long tail of content that maybe isn't going to come out of the creative team, but maybe teams outside of you.
Yeah, I think that, and this is where like people get into the whole taste argument, right? It's like it's like, oh, you can't teach taste or anything like that. But I think in some ways, like you certainly can like teach people to appreciate different versions of like what being human and showing up in that marketplace is. There's going to be a lot of experimentation that happens. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to run everything that you do. Like giving people the tools to create on their own doesn't like necessarily give them license to broadcast it. But I think that the more tools you put in the hands of the long tail of marketers, you'll be surprised like what it is that comes out. Like we at ServiceNow, you're saying, we're on our way to 30,000 people. A lot of that growth is happening overseas as it is in a lot of tech companies. Like a lot of our growth is going to be coming from APAC and EMEA and those places, and LATAM. I think that I've seen like a marketing manager in Paris like do some amazing things that aren't necessarily on brand the way that we would see it, but are certainly like they show up authentically as ourselves. Like we have a principle at ServiceNow called being hungry and humble, right? And it reminds me a lot of the AWS like principle of like earning trust, which is you need to show up in a respectful way and understand that trust is earned in drops and then lost in buckets, right? And she put together these like fun kind of quirky videos that almost feel like a Michel Gondry video. Like it's got that same level of like handmade paper craft and things like that she would then shoot and then have AI do the animation for her. She's obviously like not a still animator, but she would give it the foundations of it's like, a paper heart and then, a company, a customer logo that she would draw by hand. And AI would do the rendering for her and then do the animations and the transitions from scene to scene because she would prompt it. And it wasn't like the highest craft level that I've ever seen in my life, but it was like human and fun and totally unexpected and very French, So that wound up like on our social media campaigns, like in France. Like it didn't go global or anything like that, but she made that from scratch. Normally that would show up like maybe in a deck. And the thing that used to be like okay for a deck is now, in the hands with the right tools and the right scale video and with a little bit of brand guidance to it can become something that now scales because we don't have enough hands or even agency dollars to put together what it will take to, there's not a never ending fire hose of money. Sometimes people behave as though there is, but that's not how it actually is. So these tools for somebody like her, like were transformative for us. And that content performed really well because she's a part of that community. She understands what moves, the French sensibility for storytelling in a way that I can't. I mean, look, I'm not Jerry Lewis, right? Like I can't like wind up like walking into Paris and making people laugh. It just doesn't work that way. So I'm glad that people like her have tools like that so that we can keep this ball rolling and make money. And that obviously like that growth translates into things that you'll see in the stock market, which will capitalize us to do bigger and better projects. So I can do the Super Bowl stuff,
Yep. I love it. Obviously that's very much in line with how Capsule thinks about the world, is sort of empowering other people outside of the creative team to start to be able to create. And we have this kind of model already in the now totally decentralized world of social media that we live in, where most of the content that we consume daily is actually not produced by large media companies, but individuals who have interesting stories to tell. And I think that organizations who figure out the right way, the right balance of giving, empowering other storytellers within the organization, but also through the lens of, hey, here's, as a company, this is the story we want to tell. I think those companies are going to win and have a strong advantage over other companies who kind of stay very centralized and kind of like everything's got to be perfect. And it's cool to hear that story of how you guys are thinking about that at ServiceNow. I think we have a couple questions before we gear up to wrap this thing up. So I'm going to turn it over to Natalie and see if we have any of those questions ready to go.
That was awesome, Ryan. The super shoot was crazy to me. And I mean, I think a lot of people watching are not coming from, massive brands like Amazon or ServiceNow where there is a large budget. And I know you covered this a little bit, but like, what would you say to people who are like, yeah, this is cool. This is like amazing campaigns and really cool Super Bowl ads. But like, what about the business results? And what about like the fact that I don't have a Super Bowl budget? Like, what would you say to them? How can they still kind of weave these principles of, incorporating humanity and just creating high quality work without necessarily having these huge budgets?
Yeah, Great question. I think that these huge budgets that you're seeing like are actually kind of a relic of like where we used to be. And what's exciting about AI is that almost anybody can have ideas like this, like, and bring them to fruition or at least close to it. Like that Kalshi example, like while it's totally unhinged, like the idea that they created a spot for less than $5,000 that ran during an NBA finals, like to me, that's the new world. That's where we're heading. And if you can strike the balance between that, like, I think that while not everybody is like a Kalshi where they're going to be feeling like it's brand safe to just like go nuts on VO3 and like what the chips fall where they may and like maybe get sued or something like that. Like I I believe that there's probably a balance between those two things where you can, for a modest budget, like under $100,000, come up with an idea that transcends anything that I just showed today. Like, and that is exciting. I mean, even Rascal, who we were talking to, the same shoot that would have been 7 figures for one spot, it's still 7 figures, but it's now 7 figures for 8 spots, right? So you're talking about like an 8-to-1 reduction in cost and or efficiency for the same level of power that you're getting out of it. So that's exciting. I think for business results, it's also exciting that you can now test many more things. That like as you're finding this efficiency, you're not looking at creating one spot. You're looking at spots in different markets. Like the example that I just gave and the tools that we're giving to somebody geographically, that's going to now you can have a level of bespokeness that goes into different geographies that may be more, that require more growth, more investment that you don't necessarily have or can't show up on your balance sheet. I think that the idea that you can swap out messaging and things like that and test it. There used to be, when I first started at Amazon, these very simple message testing where it would, like, in the crappiest way, like change out headlines and then automatically serve like 4 or 5 different ads. And then as people are clicking and you're getting real-time metrics on what is responding, it would dynamically shift the media buy into the most efficient ad. I think you're going to see that, but for video. And I think that you're going to have like AI that's like creating different versions of ads. The only thing that like in the back of my head like makes me wonder is like, is it going to be AI talking to other AI? Like, is like, what is it going to wind up being is this buying journey that happens inside a box. And I think that if we go back to what we talked about earlier, like my daughter, like taking those big head photos, like what is your version of a big head photo that you're going to put in some of this that is going to wind up like putting that sweaty, greasy little thumbprint that like a human being was here. And thinking about that, like even at scale, how do we show up as being human? It could be even like you were saying, Champ, like misspelling one word just to like, like in an ad and people are like, oh, they messed up, and you could follow up with that and say like, no, not messing up, provably human,
Right.
and then run that as an ad in the same way that it's like the low budget version of that camera pulling out and showing all that porcelain that they use for the frame animation,
Someone needs to do the Super Bowl ad this year where like there's a typo in the like closing outro.
Yeah,
just
amazing.
Watch everyone go crazy on social media over it. Be great.
Oh, dude, we had an idea for a Super Bowl spot way back in the day, for Nestle, and they kept telling us it's like, oh, get the brand in there more, and we're like, okay, open on Nestle logo with Starburst rotating behind it like slowly and choir of angels like humming. And just like run that for 30 seconds, like quietly with no action in it at all. And then the very last frame, you would hear a little kid's voice just say, that's right. Like at the, the end of it. And we cracked ourselves up with that. And we're like, they'll never do that. And I actually like made my partner spit take like with that. And then cut to 10 years later. Coinbase runs the DVD bounce inside of it. And I'm like, you magnificent sons of bitches.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time before the
Yeah.
typo happens or some
Yeah.
version of the typo.
So,
Um,
all
Go
right,
ahead, Matt.
bringing it back to the messy thumbprint, the sweaty humanity of creative work. Like, as a video company, we have to ask, like, how do you view video's role in helping us kind of bridge this gap between humanity and I'll call AI skepticism? Like, what is video's role in today's creative work and in just reaching people?
I mean, it is video is the most engaged and almost like the terminal media now. The idea that you're going to run something other than video and is almost laughable at this point. Like every digital platform and surface that we're on, like if it's not motion, it's probably not going to be engaged with, like typically. So at the very minimum, like even if it's text based, it's text that's moving, it's on an image of kind. Maybe it's not video in the way that you and I think of like live video or even like animation, but something's got to be moving here. So I think that video is basically all media at this point. You have to start thinking about it that way. Otherwise, your spend is not going to be that efficient. So that's like one. Videos often, obviously like it's 24 frames a second or 12 if you're doing animation. So that is like 24x more expensive than making a still image. And if all media is going to become video, there's not going to be enough money or enough. We used to say like monkeys and typewriters to like make that happen all the time. So we got to figure out how to scale it. And at the same time, not lose the humanity in it. And I think that that's going to come down to very clever planning and production, using AI to do things like QA for us to flag, almost like training AI to see when things are inhuman. And then a human can be put in the loop. And it's like, how do we take the sheen off of this? How do we make it feel a little sweaty? Is it the idea of like the shake of the camera? Is it the way in which we're casting this? And casting obviously is going to happen inside AI too. And as we get more and more attuned to how we can use these tools, we can make them more and more human. Right now, they feel stilted and artificial and synthesized, but I think that there's going to be a moment in which like we're able to take like what is most human about us and concentrate on these ideas and then hit a button and it will scale across all these different surfaces. And that like rather than somebody having to grind out all these different edits, like that work will be done for us.
We have a customer who I won't name because this hasn't gone live yet, but they had a really interesting concept that I thought was super clever where they wanted to produce, I think it was around 5,000 different assets. And much of that production is automated, obviously, because at that scale, that's all you can do is automate. There's no, you can't go anywhere to get 5,000 assets made on, at any reasonable cost. And so, the idea that they came up with is let's automate like 80% of the content and then inject live action videos that are self-recorded by account managers across our organization, sort of at the sort of personalization level, so that like you get a video as a customer or prospect that looks like it's somebody spent, 10 grand to produce the single asset. But then there's this kind of like very authentic moment, like interstitial between it, that makes it feel like very personalized and human to you. And I think that we're going to see a lot more of that, because to me, what's exciting about automating all of the tedious parts of video production, which forever have been very, very costly and very time consuming, automating those parts will allow more and more people to participate in the human parts of video making. There are so many people that have, and I'm not talking about ads anymore. I'm talking about kind of like, maybe your tier 2 or tier 3 content, but there are so many people who, if given the chance to like have a message and put themselves on camera and then insert it into some kind of like brand packaging, that they would have a really interesting story to tell that would probably land really well with like the 20 customers that know that person. But like before that, it just was like that sort of production was just totally impossible to even think about. And so I think we're going to see a whole new category of new types of video content that are created as a result of the dramatic cost and time reduction in producing it.
I'll even take that if we have time to go for just one more minute. Like I'll take that a step further because you're making my brain fire here. Like not everybody has a great film director to elicit a performance out of them. But like you can imagine a world in which AI could take a look at what you just did and offer you like the kind of notes that you need to feel more confident in your performance, and you can get like different takes in it, right? That it's going to be like, that kind of like yes and that you get from a director. It's like, yeah, that was great. If we could do that again and get more of this, that AI can start offering you that, and you'll feel more confident, and obviously the results will get better and you'll start doing more video. There's like a positive reinforcement loop that will happen there. I can see a world, not that I love the idea that AI is going to become the director to a spot, but like you're saying, for somebody who's just doing a phone video or a creator type video that doesn't have access to a whole crew, that might be helpful for them to feel better about their performance and make more of these videos that can land for, like you said, 20 to 100 people. I can see a world that AI helps us with that too.
Well, and especially, Ryan, when the creative team and the brand team can actually kind of create that skill. We have Claude skills now, right? Where we can all kind of like program our own domain expertise into an agent. So imagine where, the brand and creative team gets to say, well, here's how we conduct these types of interviews. Here is the type of, energy or content or message that we want to elicit from this, individual recording. It's impractical to go and individually record all of those. But if you could train a ServiceNow kind of branded, creative team approved agent to go do that work on your behalf, suddenly you get that scale. And it's still in this kind of package of being, within the bounds of the brand and creative team.
Yeah, it's the idea of the super shoot, right? But now rather than us like dragging 3 cameras out, it's like sending the crew to every camera that's available to us.
Exactly. Yeah. And we all have those cameras on our desks now.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. This was a delightful conversation. I know I learned a ton and just am feeling inspired just by your work and your approach to your creative work and operating, and really grateful to have you as part of our community here at Capsule. And our next virtual event is going to be all about video. A lot of the things that we were just talking about how some of the largest enterprise brands, including ServiceNow, as well as HubSpot, Zendesk, NASA, Webflow, Carta, Cinch, are scaling video and becoming video-first companies. So that will be happening next month. And hope to see you all then. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Bye, everybody.